I don't think Crawford beats Canelo because I think the weight's just too much.
In a recent turn of events, Eddie Hearn alarmingly revealed that Terence Crawford will get knockout out brutally against Canelo Alvarez at 168 pounds. Hearn believes Crawford is a fantastic runner, and that is exactly what he will do in his fight with Canelo. Meanwhile, former professional boxer Bernard Hopkins shared his thoughts on Canelo fighting Crawford. He said that the fight has no meaning for Canelo, and there are plenty of other matches to be made before that.
Just before I let you go, man, about the fights.
What fights?
For Crawford, or excuse me, Canelo. Back to Canelo. Would you rather see him fight a Terence Crawford or Benavidez?
We talking about who?
Well, you know, the casual fan, they don't care about weight classes. They just know the names: Crawford, Canelo. They want to see it.
Crawford cares about his life, and with that fight, what do that fight do for Canelo? Fighting Crawford and Crawford beats Canelo. What do that do for Canelo? I just think that there are so many other fights to make that's realistic.
Bernard worryingly believed that Crawford is risking his own life by chasing Canelo because he doesn't have the build to go up to 168 pounds. Hopkins was of the opinion that fighters shouldn't chase other boxers who are out of their weight class if they don't have the height or the frame because they would get beaten terribly. Canelo is capable of taking down even a cruiserweight, and he specializes in his division, but Crawford came up from 130 pounds. Bernard is convinced that this is mostly about getting the bag and making as much money as possible, but there are a lot of desperate moves like this coming along these days. Bernard does not believe that Canelo will ever be fighting Crawford because this matchup makes no sense at all. However, Hopkins said that Canelo fighting Benavidez makes much more sense because they are evenly matched. David Benavidez poses a very real threat to Canelo because their styles are very similar and they are in matching weight classes. If someone were to hold a large-scale poll and let the fans decide who they would rather see Canelo fight among Benavidez or Crawford, then the answer would be David Benavidez, said Bernard, because that is a fight which is in the same weight class, and Benavidez was in the queue way before Crawford was ever mentioned. Hopkins alarmingly stated that the authorities are trying to occupy the fans with silly matchups while deviating them from the fights that make sense. He said that these fights are turning into UFC and celebrity fights rather than real boxing matches. Canelo can easily give a cruiserweight some hell, but we are seeing a 140-pounder fight a 168-pounder. Bernard believes that these rumors and gossip are ruining the sport of boxing. Furthermore, Hopkins said that he would rather see Boots Ennis fight Crawford. He elaborated by saying, "I would love to see him fight. I love to see him fight Boots from Philadelphia. I'm from Philly. Boots deserved that. He earned that, Boots. And he is undefeated, whooping everybody day by day. That's a fight. Look, show me, see get past Boots. Well, I get more money fighting Canelo. Then tell the people that you're willing to risk your everything to go up to make $50 million. It makes sense." Bernard gave Crawford a brutal warning to stay away from Canelo. He said that I would rather fight a short guy because it makes the fight easy, and Terence is only 5 feet 8 inches in height. Hopkins thinks that it's not going to be easy for Crawford to fight Canelo, and he would rather see the Benavidez fight. Meanwhile, Terence Crawford and his August 3rd opponent Israel Madrimov seem to be getting along really well with each other, which is obvious from their recent running session. Hearn thinks that he can bring out the best in Crawford because he is a really fun guy to be around, and both Madrimov and Crawford are not headbutting each other, so it was a good idea to make them run competitively. Eddie's job is to get the fans interacting and get the voices mentioning the fighters' names. Hearn also thinks that Madrimov has a really good chance of beating Crawford, which may end his legacy and his dream to face the Mexican undisputed champion, Canelo Alvarez. In an interview conducted recently, Eddie Hearn explained that Crawford is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters, but skepticism surrounds him as he moves up one weight class too many.
Obviously, Terence has one of the best ring IQs in the sport, but you've said to me previously at the announcement press conference, you never know if maybe it's just one weight too many.
That's what you hope, really, because let's be honest, Terence Crawford's pound-for-pound number 1, or 2, or 3, like, whatever way. For me, he's 1. And you hope that a guy that won his first world title at lightweight moves to 40, moves to 47, moves to 54, and then all of a sudden...
Hearn believes that Crawford has changed his weight 4 times, so it may cause trouble for him in the fights. Madrimov is a very formidable adversary that punches really hard. Eddie is skeptical whether Crawford can pull off defeating Madrimov and then catch Canelos' attention later on. His concern is genuine because Terence may end up getting hurt really bad against Israel. Moreover, Hearn commented on whether Canelo will be willing to take the Crawford fight. "I don't think Canelo is mad about that fight. I think that he kind of feels like, what do I get out of beating a 147 guy or a 154? No one one's really going to give me the credit, but look, he'd take any fight, Canelo Alvarez, if the business was right. So I guess he's got his ideas of how much he should be making in that fight, and if His Excellency can meet that number, he'll take it. If he can't or doesn't want to, that's probably a better. Then he won't make the fight, obviously. In addition, Hearn was asked what he thinks about Edgar Berlanga taking on the Canelo fight, to which he responded that it's a terrible matchup, but it's one that was required. He said that Berlanga fought Bivol and lost, and he is stepping up from 154 to 168 pounds, which may cause serious problems for him in the fight against Canelo. Eddie tried to make sense of the Canelo and Berlanga fight by saying that it only makes sense that Berlanga is the mandatory opponent. Otherwise, there are many similarities with the Jaime Munguia-Canelo matchup and Berlanga-Canelo matchup. Additionally, Hearn believes that Berlanga is a better option for Canelo because Benavidez is out of the picture. David Benavidez moved up to light heavyweight to face the winner of the upcoming Beterbiev versus Bivol bout. He waited years in 168 so that he could face Canelo, but that doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. Hearn stunningly claimed that Canelo Alvarez will never ever duck a fight, but certain situations forced him to avoid Benavidez. Alvarez has a number in his mind in terms of how much money he can make with each fight, and he doesn't seem to be getting that with David. Furthermore, David Benavidez is a huge 175-pounder, and he will hydrate to massive numbers, so that is the reason Canelo was demanding an absurd amount of money. In addition, Hearn is convinced that Edgar Berlanga is a really good fighter since he's undefeated in his weight class, and he punches really hard. Jaime Munguia against Canelo Alvarez was a really good fight, even though Jaime was not ready to face the Mexican monster, but Berlanga and Canelo are even better. Eddie elaborated his remarks on Edgar Berlanga facing Canelo. He said that Berlanga just won a lottery ticket with the amount of money he will be making, and if he gets a good shot at beating Canelo, then it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Eddie further commented that it was a really hard task for him to get PBC to work with them to make the Canelo and Berlanga fight, but it was worth it. Furthermore, Hearn was asked if Terence wins the fight against Madrimov, then does he have a chance of facing Canelo? Eddie alarmingly stated that he doesn't think Crawford can beat Canelo because the weight is just too much. It's not just that Canelo will be 168, rather he will be close to 175 or even 185 in the ring, and he has been at that weight for too long. Crawford's thin stature does not support him going up to 168. Right now, Hearn believes that Canelo and Crawford fight is more of a fantasy fight because he is not convinced the fight will ever be made. Meanwhile, Terence the Bud Crawford was asked if he is thinking of the Canelo fight as Turki Al-Sheikh will be reaching out to Canelo directly. Terence responded that he is more focused on the fight ahead, which is with Madrimov rather than thinking about Canelo.
For me, I know His Excellency would like to see what is potentially the biggest fight in boxing. Yourself and Canelo Alvarez. I know you don't ever want to overlook an opponent come Saturday night. Came out last week, back end of last week, saying that he's going to make him an offer, doesn't want to deal with any people in the middle, just go directly to Canelo. You are the fight that he wants to make for Canelo. Is that in the back of your mind? And not so much that you'd overlook, but even more incentive to go and put a performance in on Saturday night, knowing that you could have a historical event with Canelo?
Not really, because I'm so focused on the job at hand that I'm not thinking about Canelo. Canelo got to fight.
Additionally, Crawford revealed his reviews about the Berlanga and Canelo fight. He was brutally honest in his remarks when he said that Canelo will stop Berlanga. He does believe that Edgar is a good fighter, and he can be a world champion one day, but now is not his time. Crawford sees Canelo winning easily against Berlanga, as Edgar doesn't even stand a chance. Moreover, when Crawford was asked about his next opponent, Israel Madrimov, and if he sees him as a threat or his hardest opponent yet, Terence was unsure how he views his fight against Madrimov because he has not been in the ring with him, and everything will be revealed on Saturday night. Crawford further said that he thinks Madrimov has power and good footwork, and he maintains nice head movements at times. Crawford alarmingly stated that he is a different type of animal, and he will see who he goes up against when the time comes. Meanwhile, Israel Madrimov shared his thoughts on why he thinks he can beat Terence Crawford.
Yes, he want my belt. I want his greatness, because I will be Saturday night. Great fight, inshallah.
When Israel was asked about the weaknesses he sees in Crawford's fighting and physique, he responded by saying that Saturday night will show the world his weakness. Additionally, Israel was asked about his thoughts on Turkey, mentioning Crawford and Canelo multiple times before his bout with Crawford. Madrimov responded by saying that everyone else has their plans, and I have my plans that will become evident soon. Israel was then asked if he would be interested in facing Canelo if he beats Crawford and if Alvarez wins against Berlanga. Madrimov replied by saying that first, he needs to focus on Terence Crawford, and once he is done with that, he will be going after the biggest fights possible, which includes Canelo at 168 pounds. In another interview with Eddie Hearn, he distressingly warned Crawford not to go up against Canelo Alvarez at 168 because he will get hurt very badly. Eddie Hearn thinks that Crawford is jumping too many weight classes, which may end up ruining his career for good.
12 rounds scheduled. It will be for both the WBO interim and WBA super welterweight championships of the world, and it is a final eliminator for the WBC World Championship.
In an interview elsewhere, sports commentator Jim Lampley shared his thoughts on Terence Crawford when he explained that he is a huge fan of Bud.
Crawford, Israel's up. Who do you got for that fight? And how do you think it plays out?
So I was the narrator of Crawford's arrival at the championship level the night that he stepped up on an undercard at Top Rank CAD here in Las Vegas. They had been looking for an opponent for Bradis Prescott. The fight was supposed to be a stepping stone for Bradis Prescott to begin emerging as a star at 130 pounds, and Terence Crawford dominated every minute of every round. So I've been a big Terence Crawford fan from that moment forward. It's been...
Jim commented that he has witnessed Crawford's journey over time when he was not very well known to when he turned into a superstar. Lampley further added that Terence is definitely the #1 pound-for-pound fighter. Jim further revealed that there have been a lot of talks in the media about the potential Canelo and Crawford fight, which will also be one of the most highly paid fights in the history of boxing. Lampley explained that it's a possibility the fight between Canelo and Crawford may happen, because that would be the #1 dollar-for-dollar fight, feeding their families forever. Jim commented on Crawford's fight with Madrimov, as that will lead him to Canelo. I understand the ambition. I understand the desire to show starting tomorrow night at 154 pounds, or this weekend at 154 pounds, that he can fight in a bigger package than 147, and that he can plausibly get to 168 and face off against Canelo. And what would be terrific showdown. And I'm sure that Canelo is hoping that Terence will be able to make that journey and come up and fight him absolutely. In addition to his remarks, Jim stated that Crawford will not be able to rock Canelo the same way he did Errol Spence Jr. Canelo has by far the best punch resistance, so it will be a huge challenge for Terence. Meanwhile, Terence Crawford's coach Bomac shared his thoughts on Eddie Hearn when he said that he doesn't like to talk to Eddie Hearn because of a bitter past experience.
One person that was around at the head-to-head yesterday was Eddie Hearn. I know Terence said, I'm 3 up against you at the moment against Eddie Hearn. They had their little back and forth. What's your interactions been like with Mr. Hearn over the years?
I don't talk to him much, you know what I'm saying? I asked him when I was in jail over there why he didn't send me no money. He said nobody called him. What did he say? He said nobody called him. They picked up the phone and called him.
Later on, Bomac was asked if Israel Madrimov's promoters actually believe they can beat Terence Crawford. Bomac shockingly stated that it is more of a promotion tactic than a real prediction, because that is their job to say that Madrimov is going to beat Terence Crawford. Bomac knows deep inside, and he thinks that all the fans know it as well, that Terence Crawford will beat Israel Madrimov. Bomac further commented on Israel Madrimov's inexperience. For Madrimov to just come in with 10 fights or 11 fights, that's a big, he got a huge climb ahead of him and me. Terence, he's getting better and better each fight. Think of that, because his IQ and he learns he's 40, about to be 41 fights into his career, and he understands the game. He understands how the game works, how to win fights, because that's how I look at it. Bomac compared Errol Spence's situation to Madrimov's when he said that Errol and his team were talking a lot before the fight with Crawford, but all their trash talk turned into false claims in the end. Furthermore, Coach Bomac was asked if he is thinking about the potential Canelo-Alvarez fight in the near future, to which he responded that he is not here to think about gossip. He is more focused on Israel Madrimov. Bomac believes that Madrimov is a very dangerous dude, and he can give Terence some real trouble, so nothing is solid until the two fighters get into the ring. Bomac threw all the gossip about the Canelo-Alvarez fight out of the window in hopes of being focused on beating Israel. Meanwhile, in another interview, former boxer Sean Porter was asked to give his thoughts on the Madrimov and Crawford fight, to which he worryingly responded that he doesn't like how people just look at numbers of professional fights.
Takes on Israel Madrimov up at 154 pounds. A really, really exciting prospect of what we're going to get in the ring at the BMO on Saturday night.
Yeah, what I don't like about this fight is that people understand numbers. And I don't hate that people understand numbers. However, when you got 40 against 10, it's like, what are we talking about?
Shawn Porter fought Terence Crawford in 2021 and was defeated in the 10th round with a technical knockout. Shawn shared his experience with Crawford when he said that it was the toughest 10 rounds he had ever experienced. He had only witnessed such combat skills a handful of times when he was an amateur. Shawn Porter was undefeated before the fight with Crawford, but his legacy fell to pieces when the Bud stood up to him, and this fight marked the end of Shawn's career in boxing, leading to his retirement. Shawn shockingly warned Crawford of Madrimov's intense power and agility. He said that Terence is taking this fight very seriously because he always has the same face going into the fight, and Madrimov can pose a big threat to him. When it comes to professional fights, people often overlook that fighters from different countries have fought way more amateur fights, which puts them in the same position as a pro boxer. Furthermore, Shawn expressed his urge of facing Crawford once again, but he has to remind himself that he is too far gone to come back to boxing. He also said that when the fight weeks come, they force a retired boxer to step up once again. But a lot of the things hold a retired fighter back from coming back into the ring. Do you think Canelo is too much of a challenge for Crawford at 168? Let us know in the comments section below and subscribe for more videos like this.